We talk a lot about tomorrow. We believe that your tomorrow will be different from today. A tomorrow of love and wonder, healing and sobriety. Whatever you need. And we hope beyond these words you will see that tomorrow. But we know that you may need some answers now. So let's talk about today. It's the day a friend hears your voice. Today, your face is the first thing she sees. Nothing would be the same if you did not exist. You are already enough. Just as you are. You don't have to perform, or hustle, or hide, or fake it. You can be honest. Your honest words give someone else permission to offer theirs. It's your voice, your ideas, your story, the way you share these makes today better. You who are worth so much to so many, you make today better.
Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Lindsay Kolsch, and I am Tualoha's co-executive director, and I am joined now on the live stream with Tualoha's founder, Jamie Torkowski. Welcome, Jamie.
Hello. Super happy to be here.
Yeah, we are doing a live stream in honor of World Suicide Prevention Day. We are also actually recording this as a podcast, which is why you see these wonderful microphones in front of us. We're going to be joined in just a little bit also by a special guest, Denny Kolsch. He is a licensed mental health counselor. But today is World Suicide Prevention Day, and we really wanted to create a space where we could have an ongoing conversation about suicide prevention, and what we can be doing as a community and individuals. And so today really represents that. There are people across the globe activating, lifting their voices, talking about this issue, sharing their stories. And so that's what today's going to be. We're going to get to talk and answer some of your questions. We're going to be having conversations about some of the myths and lies about stigma that keep us from talking about suicide. But I wanted to give a couple announcements. If you're joining us, we've got people on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, and also on Twitter. So if you have a question that you want to submit, if you want to join the conversation, please do that in the comment section. If you are on Twitter, we encourage you to use the hashtag #YouMakeTodayBetter. We are also joined on Twitter by our dear friends at Crisis Text Line and Child Mind Institute. They're going to be joining the conversation. So there's a lot going on today. It's a lot of really great stuff happening right now. So before we get too far into the conversation, for people who are not familiar with this campaign or maybe even this day that honors the people we've lost and also the work we're doing to prevent suicide, I wonder, Jamie, if you could kind of just talk a little bit about what is World Suicide Prevention Day, what is this campaign that we're doing, the You Make Today Better campaign, and let's just start there, because I think that's kind of like a nice way to catch people up if you haven't been with us on these last 5 to 6 weeks that we've been leading up to this very day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think we just read that 2003 was the first ever World Suicide Prevention Day. For us, I think this is our 8th year in a row recognizing and honoring and participating in both World Suicide Prevention Day, which is today, and then here in the U.S., National Suicide Prevention Week. And I tell people all the time, especially lately, this is the biggest day of the year. This has really become, September 10th has become the day that our year revolves around. And obviously, as Lindsay said, the the weeks leading up to this, it's become not only the day, but the campaign that means the most to us throughout the year. And today, in the midst of all the busyness and all the things, it's been so cool to try to keep up with social media and to see so many friends and partners and supporters that are, as you said, lending their voice and participating. If it's sharing our video, if it's wearing the t-shirt, and maybe the thing we love the most, just people being vulnerable and talking about why this day, this conversation, this work means something. So I think it's really the one day that honors the work that we do year round and just really prioritizes at a national and international level this conversation. And for us, I think it's been so special to somehow see it grow year after year, campaign after campaign, and to see the fundraising goal go up, to see more and more people buy the packs and wear the t-shirts. And it's just neat that this day that, probably when we started 8 or 9 years ago, the average person hadn't heard of it. And I think more and more people are now familiar with this day.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the statement this year. Our statement this year is a little different than it has been in prior campaigns, which, of course, we're trying to always bring something new to the conversation that still captures the heart of our mission and what we're trying to accomplish. But this year, the statement is, "You make today better." I wonder if you could share just a little bit about how we arrived at this statement and what it says this year, what message we're trying to really kind of drive home and communicate while we're asking people to think about it and answer that. I would love if you talk about that.
Yeah, as you were talking, I want to give a shout out to a former staff member of ours who remains a dear friend, Chloe Grabansky.
Yeah, Chloe.
It was Chloe who came to us actually probably 9 years ago and said, "Hey, there's this thing called World Suicide Prevention Day, National Suicide Prevention Week. We need to be a part of this." And at first it was just a white t-shirt with our logo, our title logo in orange. And every year since then, it's been a statement, as you touched on. And I think it's been a really healthy challenge because we have all these statements that we love. And I think it keeps raising the bar where it's like, man, how do we come up with the next one? I remember a few years back, it was "No one else can play your part." And I remember thinking, man, how could we top that? And we've had a couple that mentioned tomorrow. So much of hope is synonymous with the future and tomorrow. And it was Alex Jones, who's a designer of ours, who had this year's idea, "You make today better." And to me, it was another healthy challenge to think, how do you talk about hope? How do you talk about suicide prevention, not only in the future, but reframing it and looking at today and looking at the present, and kind of this simple idea that we want people to believe these words are true, for the person wearing the shirt, for the other people that encounter this message, and to invite people to be a bit vulnerable, even to be a bit proud and talk about, how is this word true? I finished the sentence, "I make today better," by or for. When we were working on the video, I remember filming with a few friends, and they talked about it being a bit of a challenge and also being just different because it feels almost a bit selfish, like to kind of brag. And especially we were with some people that, they have bands that are successful or acting careers. But to me, there's something really powerful about inviting people. And I tried to reframe it for them. Why is life worth living? Because I think with every statement every year, that's ultimately what we're getting at. Is
exactly.
What is it that makes this life worth staying for? And what is it in your present and your future that you want to be around for?
Yeah. Can I put you on the spot and ask you why you make today better?
Oh, yeah.
We're just going to do it right up top.
No.
We're going to get there.
I wrote mine and shared it on Instagram the other day. So I think I start with my family and friends. I make today better for my parents. My parents were told they would never get to be parents, so that has always stayed with me. My two sisters, Jessica and Emily. I'm now a puppy dad, as everyone around here knows. So I make today better for this little dog named Gracie, and she makes my day better. And then friends, and then certainly there's a work and purpose aspect of I want to try to make the day better for other people by communicating, by speaking and writing, by offering words of hope. I try to be honest and share my experience just as a person on this planet and hope that can be helpful to people. What about you?
Oh, I knew you were going to do that. I actually wrote like 3 or 4 different
Wait, was it
responses.
Levi? Did you see Levi wrote 20 pages?
Oh, nope. See, I didn't do that. But I did write 3 or 4 different ones. And I, like you were saying, it's a challenge to really, I don't know, to figure out or to think about what has the most meaning in your life. And I did come back to kind of the same categories that you had mentioned. My son, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a twin sister. I'm a beekeeper, so I hope that matters. I believe in this work that we're doing, and I think I have to remind myself, even now after 9 or 10 years, that I have something to say and add to this conversation. So believing that empowers me. It empowers me to talk about, like you said, my own experience with anxiety and postpartum depression. And then the hard stuff of just being like a human, It's just hard. I think we have a mutual friend, Byron, who said life is hard for most people most of the time.
Yeah.
And I love that because it just gives you permission to walk through life knowing that it's a struggle, but knowing that it's so worth it. So that's how I would probably answer that one. I think that's the one I ended up posting.
I love it.
Yeah. Today's World Suicide Prevention Day, and you mentioned that it is also falling within National Suicide Prevention Week, which started in America on Sunday, this past Sunday. It was cool this morning to wake up and see people from Australia, the UK, on the hashtag talking about just what they're doing and their efforts, getting a sense that this is really a global fight. We talk about it from our perspective because we are in America. But it's not just America. It's not just these issues that we'll get into a little bit more, but issues like depression, they affect people worldwide. And so if that's the number one leading cause of suicide, you're going to see that worldwide. And of course, there's different things that impact us and impact the rate of suicide in America that we'll get into and we'll talk a little bit about. But I just wanted to kind of mention, if you are following along on the conversation, please look at the hashtag, look at what's going on. Like, you adding your voice today matters because this is a global conversation, a global issue. And we're just really proud and excited to be creating this space right now for it.
Just to echo that, I woke up and the first thing I saw was a post from a guy who's a hero and sort of a mentor and friend, Bob Hurley, who is actually in Indonesia, I believe, on a surf trip. And he did a World Suicide Prevention Day post. And because of the time difference, he had already posted. And so it was really neat, again, to kind of get that global perspective. And as Lindsay said, I think going back to our beginning, people, especially early on, wanted to pigeonhole, or some people did, oh, this is an issue, this is about teenage girls, or this is about young people, or this is people who go to the Warped Tour. And it's always felt important, I think, to us to push back and say, these issues, depression, mental health, addiction, suicide, these things touch the lives of people, young and old, around the world, people whose lives might look very different. They listen to different music, they vote differently, their faith is different. This is part of being a person on this planet. And I feel like today is such a good day to recognize that.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit again about what kind of, if you're just joining us, we are doing our World Suicide Prevention Day live stream chat. We are broadcasting here on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. If you are also wanting to be a part of the conversation, you can be submitting questions on Twitter. The hashtag for that is YouMakeTodayBetter. We're going to be getting to those questions here in just a minute. But you ran through these a little quick at the beginning. I want to come back to them. On this day, we've been talking for the past 5 weeks. What is it that we're asking people to do? Kind of like, if you're just joining us, what are things we're encouraging folks to do?
So we're in, I think, definitely to check out the website, to check out specifically the campaign.
YouMakeTodayBetter.com.
Yeah, YouMakeTodayBetter.com. There are so many ways, big and small, that you can get involved. And I think the two that come to mind, you can chime in if I miss anything, the World Suicide Prevention Day packs, which I think are still relevant. Even if you order yours today, it's still relevant moving forward. It's a t-shirt, and it's also other tools and items that will allow you to bring this conversation to your community, to your campus, to your workplace. And then there's also a really significant fundraising piece where we're trying to raise $150,000, which will translate to 3,000 counseling sessions. And I believe that goal has gone up every year. Yeah,
it has. We are right now, so we had a goal this year to raise $150,000. We are currently at $112,000, which is awesome. So many people fundraising. It's not too late to sign up and be a fundraiser or to give. what we use these funds for each year is to actually provide a treatment and recovery scholarship. So with that money, we would be able to provide 3,000 counseling sessions. These are people, many of which who have extreme financial barriers to sit with a counselor. They're people who've never sat with a counselor before. This is the access to the hope and help that we talk about. And so it's key to what we do every year. It's really important. And it also helps us fund our Find Help tool, which we launched actually 1 year ago today. We launched our Find Help tool, which is a tool on our website where you put in your zip code and what level of care you're looking for, whether it's counseling or support group. And you put your zip code in, and then it will pull up searches for or results for things that are close by you that are free or reduced cost services. You can filter the results. But really, we talk about being a bridge to help. We needed to be a bridge to help better. And so this is where we've invested to make sure that that's accessible for people. Now, that's a tool within the U.S., but since it launched, we have seen 56,000 searches. So we know that when we show up to a music festival or when we post about this online, people are looking for help. They don't know where to find it. This is our answer. Here's a great place to start. We also have a staff member who can help people walk through what options they do find if they're not quite sure. We've got FAQs about it. We really want to equip people and walk along with them on this journey, because we know it's hard. Like, you grow up going to the doctor, getting checks and wellness checks, but you don't grow up checking in on how you're doing mentally or how your mental health is. And so that's kind of an intimidating process for people. Sure. So we want to take out some of those barriers and make it possible for people.
I was just going to mention, prior to a year ago, we listed major cities. And so for any given state, there might be 3 or 4, 5 or 6 cities. But obviously people live in places in between. People live in smaller cities and towns and rural areas. And I think there's a lot of pride on our team and satisfaction knowing that, starting with here in the U.S., that no matter where you live, no matter how big or small, we can help you connect to mental health resources.
Yeah. So that's one way we're encouraging people. You did leave one out. One big thing would be to watch and share the video.
Yes.
So we're actually going to do that now, if that's okay. I'm looking at our production team. We want to share that with you. We posted it on Sunday evening. Jamie had mentioned it's a collection of your voices, friends of the organization, athletes, actors, actresses, people who want to make sure that as many people as possible are going to hear this statement.
I was just going to say, we did some travel. I got to go to Los Angeles, in and around LA, spent a couple of days in Nashville. But then, as Lindsay touched on, just so many people submitted videos. So from across the U.S., from outside of the U.S., and so we love this mix of faces and voices.
You make today better. You do.
You make today better.
You make today better.
You make today better.
Tú haces que día sea mejor sonriendo.
Hey, you make today better.
I make today better because I can be someone's new friend.
I make today better because I decided to live despite every reason to not.
Your love makes today better.
I make today better by being curious.
You are worth so much to so many.
I have so much love to share with my sister.
I make today better by letting myself feel my feelings and then making songs out of them.
I make today better. Stay strong and keep fighting.
I make today better for my daughter.
I make today better by having grace for myself and grace for others.
Life is worth living, even now.
I make today better by getting back up even though I've fallen many, many times.
You make today better.
I make today better by loving you.
I make today better by inspiring young girls to live their dreams.
I make today better for my fellow dreamers.
You make today better!
I make today better because I'm a really great dog mom.
Your story is already important. You are worth knowing in this moment, just as you are.
I make today better by welcoming my students into more than just a classroom.
I make today better by telling stories that unite us all.
I make today better by sharing my heart with the world.
I make today better because I have a lot of love to give for the people who depend on me.
Your voice makes today better. Your ideas make today better.
Even if I can't always see the light inside of me, I make today better by sharing it with the people around me.
You, right there. You make today better.
By being a loving mom to my 2 beautiful girls.
I make today better by loving and serving the people around me.
I make today better because I fight for my dream and I inspire others to fight for theirs.
I make today better by offering a safe space to my students, and they make today better when they take me up on the offer.
I make today better by doing what I love.
You make today better because you've come so far and there's so much to celebrate.
You don't have to hide.
You don't have to fake it.
You make today better.
I make today better by making others laugh.
I make today better for my 3 boys.
I make today better for my family, my friends, and the sport soccer.
I make today better because I survived, and now I am living, breathing proof that there is always hope.
You make today better too.
Awesome. So that was our World Suicide Prevention Day video. We're encouraging you, if you're just joining us, to share that video. We've heard from so many people already what that video meant to them. To me, my favorite moment at the end, it's a supporter named Shane, and he talks about his own experience with suicide. And Shane is one of our top fundraisers. He comes back year after year and has continued to share his story and help this conversation move forward. And it gets me right here, and I'm just so grateful for all the people who added their voices to that video. It's just awesome. So we're hoping that you will share it with your community, with your friends that you love. Send it to someone, tag somebody in a video. We would love if you could join us to do that.
And specifically, obviously, so many of us live on Instagram these days. You can add it to your story. You can find it on To Write Love's Instagram, so you can add it to your story there. And then we've posted the YouTube link on Twitter and Facebook. So yeah, we just
done all the things.
Yeah, we want as many people as possible to hear those words and to experience this video.
And if you are just joining us, I want to welcome a friend of the organization, Denny Kolsch. Denny is joining us. You want to go ahead and just introduce yourself, folks?
I am a licensed mental health counselor, and I work in a treatment center that I started a couple years ago called Peace Club. We're a dual diagnosis treatment center. And I historically I've worked with people struggling with addictions and mood disorders, and I specialize in trauma therapy. Okay.
I would like to point out, in the spirit of honest conversations, that they are more than friends. These two
oh my gosh.
What?
Are more than friends.
We're married.
Yes. We are married in that regard.
Biased, but one of my favorite couples.
Great. So thank you, Denny. Thank you for joining us. When I thought about this conversation, we wanted to bring in a voice that we value and that we trust, and obviously we thought about you. So thank you for joining us. I did want to just take 2 steps back because I forgot before we ran the video. We wanted to highlight some of the awesome things that this community is doing in their community, not only online, but we've got people from Upper Moreland High School in Pennsylvania. They are inviting their students to share those response cards that came in from that WSPD pack. They're putting them up within the school. I think that's such a cool opportunity for students to share. I mean, we talk about suicide being now one of the leading cause of death for people between the ages of 15 and 29. There are movements now for people to start talking about mental health in schools, and we're going to continue in that effort, but it's just really cool to see this campaign make its way into the halls. We've got sports teams standing with us today. I'm thinking of the U.S. women's national team players that will get to announce something special at the end of this live stream. The Chicago Bandits, thank you. We also have really cool communities of people doing creative stuff like Good Type Tuesday that I believe is on Instagram, where they are taking this phrase and really making it their own, making it works of art. And so we hope you'll follow along on our hashtag, which is You Make Today Better. You'll be able to see all of those things that we're posting, following along on our stories. But we do want to get a little bit now into some of the questions. We wanted this to be a dialogue between our supporters and our team. So this question is coming from Rebecca on Twitter. What advice would you have for someone who has never been to a counselor and is nervous to go? I'm looking, we're all pointing at Denny, but I would say I've been to a counselor. You've been to a counselor, so we'll chime in. But we get this question a lot. We actually talked a little bit about this on our Find Help, our FAQ episode on the podcast, the Detroit Love Unarmed podcast. But it's one that a lot of people seem to have, and so I think it's totally worth answering now. So I'm going to start with you, Denny. Is it super scary and terrible?
I would say, to start, it's normal to feel anxious and worried about it, and afraid. I think our society hasn't really helped us to feel secure and comfortable with reaching out for help and stepping into a counselor's office. So it's okay to feel anxious and worried about the experience. But beyond that, I would say that it can be helpful to reach out to a friend that maybe has gone through counseling to gain some familiarity with it and what somewhat to expect. But overall, I think it's okay to feel that way, and it's you can't stay where you're at. There's a reason that you feel this desire and are having thoughts to reach out and step into counseling, and you should follow that.
Yeah. And I would say, just even on a practical standpoint, like showing up a little early to fill out the paperwork, because there's paperwork involved, knowing that maybe the first session you sit down with, you're going to be getting to know each other. You know, you're not expected to reveal the deepest, darkest, hardest parts of your story right off the bat. It's a relationship. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit just to like the counseling approach that's common in America. I mean, there's so many different types of treatment and therapies, but what you see often is that outpatient counseling. Yeah, so it's
counseling should start off pretty slow. So they start by getting the paperwork. There's a bunch of legalese that has to happen in every state, but some states have different requirements. So a lot of it's some of that up front, and then just getting to know you. And most counselors will take it at your pace up front and really try to develop what we call rapport. So it's very relational up front, and it should be driven by the client. So it should be the person going in and being able to largely direct which way it goes. And then I would say, if it doesn't feel like a good fit even after the first session, because sometimes you can just tell intuitively that this is not really clicking, it's okay to not go back.
Yeah.
Right?
You haven't
so you don't have to.
Exactly.
So.
Which you don't mean give up on counseling.
No, sorry. You don't have to go back to that counselor. I encourage you to try other counselors.
They're like, I already went.
So you definitely, good clarifier. So there are counselors out there that are going to fit better with your personality, with the way that you grow as a person.
Yeah, I love to tell people, like, if you had a weird experience with a plumber, hopefully you don't give up on plumbing. You just find a different plumber or dentist, like that we can approach it the same way. Yeah, for sure. I get asked some version of that, and I love to tell people or just invite people to be honest. Yeah. And I love that Denny talked about it's okay. It makes sense to be anxious. I think life is made up of so many firsts, like even ones we don't remember. The first time I went swimming, the first time I was on an airplane, like it's okay that we might be intimidated by this. I went away for a week of therapy a couple summers ago at a place called Onsite, and their motto that we heard over and over was trust the process. And I love to offer that to people, even if it's as simple as walking into your first counseling appointment, but that to trust that you're in good hands and to to really step into that process. And as much as, you get to play a part to allow these folks to do what they do incredibly well and to lead you through it.
Yeah, and I would also mention, just to Rebecca, if you're nervous, I would hope you have somebody that you can tell you're nervous. Like, tell a friend, hey, I've got my first appointment coming up. I'm a little nervous. Do you mind if I text you while I'm in the waiting room, or if I text you right when I get out? Think about your support system, because the counselor is going to help you with a new perspective on what's going on, with a new kind of guide forward and treatment. But your friends, the people who are in your circles, they're the ones who already know you and can provide comfort or help you, kind of reassure you. And I would always say, if there's somebody in your life that you trust, please share that with, because it's a privilege in a sense to encourage our friends towards wellness and towards health. So
we are rooting for you.
Yes, we are rooting for you, Rebecca. You can also, if you're looking for a counselor, we would encourage you to check out that Find Help tool on our website. If you go to twaloha.com/find-help, or just in the right top corner of the website, it's a little blue button. We would love for you to check that out and look for a counselor if you're still searching. This question is from Rosie. She also submitted this on Twitter. What's one very important thing you want people to know about therapy?
Danny Kolsch.
That it works.
Okay, it's a good one.
And it works better than doing nothing. I mean, bottom line. So, and it's the most, so we know some of the things that work to help people with mental health struggles and to grow and change from those. And psychotherapy is one of those. Medication is another one of those. So I would say be hopeful and know that there is strong evidence in my own personal life, but on paper in research, that it works.
Yeah, and I think it's important, we've talked a lot about this before, is just even when you're looking for a counselor or in different seasons of your life, like there are different therapy options that a lot of people aren't aware about. So there's kind of like the normal talk therapy sort of option, but there's treatment for trauma. There is equine therapy. There's so many different options. Like, I just want people to kind of know that it's not necessarily what sometimes gets portrayed in movies, where you're laying down on a couch and just talking about your dreams or something like that. I mean, of course, there's maybe a place for that, but it does look very different depending on what you're looking for, what your needs are. So I think that's worth talking about.
Yeah, and it's the process of finding the right therapist it's pretty daunting to know that you have the right therapist who's going to be able to treat what it is that you're struggling with. So even that is it can be difficult. So often people will just think that they're with the right therapist, but that therapist actually isn't fully competent in treating whatever they're going through.
Like so it's specialty or
a specialty,
something.
yeah. So if, for example, if you struggle with trauma issues, then you should get fit with a therapist who has some kind of specialty with trauma, PTSD. Otherwise, sometimes there can be more damage, right? So you want to go with people that know what they're doing in that area.
Okay, great. Did you have anything that you wanted to share about that? That you've learned that?
I think it comes back to that honesty thing. I've been with my counselor, actually thanks to you guys. You were the one that suggested her. She's wonderful. I guess a couple years now, and this, not to do a long story, but I think I realized I was holding back at times because I wanted her to like me.
Okay.
And just realizing kind of the irony of that this is the place to bring the hard stuff. This is the place to be super honest, and sort of recognizing the absurdity of, if I'm not willing to talk about it here, like, what's the point? And so I think, again, just coming back to that, it's a space to unpack the hard stuff and to know that, say there's shame involved in that. For me, that my counselor is going to help me process that and help me walk through that in a healthy way. And I think that's been really, really good, to be willing to do the work, to say, okay, it might not be easy, it might be hard to get the words out, but this is the place to to talk about those hard things.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Jamie. I wanted to give a quick shout out to In Weasel on Twitch, just gave us a donation, and we are actually have a quick update on the whole campaign. We are now at $112,000. So that's great. So thank you for donating. Thank you for joining. We have folks joining us on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. We also have a conversation happening in Twitter with our friends Crisis Text Line and the Child Mind Institute. If you want to be a part of the conversation, whatever platform you are interacting on, please put them in the comments. Our team is responding to all of these if we don't get to them on the live stream. We are also using the hashtag YouMakeTodayBetter on Twitter. But this is really great. Like I'm really glad that we're doing this. I wanted to talk a little bit more now about National Suicide Prevention Week. When we talk about our campaign, often we talk about World Suicide Prevention Day, which is today. But in America, it does fall on this week-long activities or things that can be done in America. So we're going to get a little bit more specific here with some of the things that we want to share with you guys that are watching.
I was just going to add, and if you can do these elsewhere.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. They're totally applicable, but we just happen to line them up on the dates that are in America. But they are 100% applicable. I appreciate you saying that. We started this week off with one of the most important parts of suicide prevention, and it's knowing the signs and asking the questions. All of these action steps, by the way, can be found on our website at youmaketodaybetter.com. There's days listed, and so you just click on one of those days and check out what's in that content. On Sunday, we worked with American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to talk a little bit more about what are some of the signs that someone might be displaying or kind of showing if they are considering suicide or having suicidal thoughts or having a mental health crisis. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. We encourage you to check out that link. We'll put some links in our comments if we can so that you can find that easily, as well as in our show notes on the podcast recording. But I want to just talk about that a little bit. And before we talk about maybe the warning signs, I want to put like a little very important like pin at the top of this conversation and say that we realize that when you talk about suicide prevention, we are standing among and with people who are survivors of suicide. And so when we talk about what we can do to prevent suicide, we do really want to just take a moment and acknowledge the weight and the pain that comes with suicide. People have experienced the loss of a loved one by suicide and said, I didn't see any of these signs. And so we want to acknowledge that that's real. We hope that by these conversations being more vocal, that people will not be silenced and that these signs could be, because a lot of the signs are, some of the top ones are talking about thinking of dying by suicide or hurting themselves. And so like, just as we get into that, I just really want to say like, we acknowledge that it fuels us to want to reach more people. And yeah, so I want to just talk a little bit more now about kind of what would be some signs. And Denny, I thought maybe you could help us understand like someone in a suicidal crisis or considering suicide, what would be some signs to be watching for?
So I think there's two ways to go about it. There's people that are in active suicidal ideation, and then there's people that would be more passively suicidal.
Okay.
And so sometimes it looks as explicit and apparent as somebody saying, I don't want to be here anymore.
Okay. And talking about suicide.
Like talking about
ending
suicide.
their life. Yep.
Withdrawing significantly, in a major state of depression.
Giving away
possessions.
Items,
yeah. And even as far as finding, like obviously more intentional indicators like notes or something written. So there's active suicidal ideation, but then there's passive, and passive is more of the, everyone would be better off without me.
Okay.
So it's not really directly like I want to kill myself or I want to die, but underneath that is a disposition of despair.
Okay.
that we have hopelessness, despair. Yeah.
Lack of regard for their own well-being, that kind of thing. And then behavior-wise, I guess this could be in either case, passive or kind of actively suicidal, would be, like you said, withdrawing from activities or things they love, calling and saying goodbye to people. Let's see, there's giving away the prized possessions, or even just actively researching suicide methods online, which sometimes, as people have shared devices or whatever, they can come across, Google searches and things. And then the other one, which you touched on, is just this underlying mental illness, right? Mood changing. I've actually heard, and what's really interesting when you go through some of these suicide prevention trainings, is sometimes actually someone who's been in a very down mood and then suddenly is in a very positive mood. That actually happened with a friend of ours who all of a sudden it seemed like things were really turning around. And it was because the relief that they felt from having a plan to die by suicide actually buoyed their mood in the interim. And it was shocking and it was heartbreaking. But that's one that can also happen. So there's things like anxiety, lack of interest, or just crises. But as we talk about these symptoms, I think the warning signs, the most important thing in my mind is to not figure it out, but to take any of these as moments and opportunities to ask that person that you love and that you care about, are you okay? Or maybe even more directly, are you thinking of hurting yourself, or are you thinking of killing yourself? Like, we have to at some point have kind of the difficult conversation and know that it's okay, because there are things you can do, there are resources you can point them to, there's treatment. So knowing that question is really important. What would you kind of guide people in saying would be that next step? So I'm having a conversation with my friend Jamie, and he's been he's just shared that he has thought about dying by suicide. What would be kind of a next best step for me and him at that stage?
So probably the most difficult part about the reality of suicide is that there's so much stigma there that's preventing people from talking about it. So the antidote to it often is the opposite of it. So what that looks like is facing it head on. So it's being direct. And as therapists, like one of the first things that we have to learn in our master's program or whatever program is risk assessment and how to talk about self-harm and harm to others. And when you're trained to talk about those things, you have to be very direct. You're taught to be direct. So there's a way to be direct with a friend or a loved one, and do it in a compassionate way. But nonetheless, asking directly, are you having thoughts about hurting yourself? Or are you having thoughts about thoughts of suicide? Are you having thoughts of killing yourself? It's okay to say those things and be direct about it.
And I would say early on, one of the things I learned about that question, and I love that you talk about compassion, because we have to, and you and I talked about this on one of our launch episodes for the season, was the idea that framing the question kind of open-ended, so they can say, I am thinking about it, and not implying, I think you often hear maybe in pop culture, like, you're not thinking of killing yourself, are you? Because the only answer to that, of course, is no. That doesn't give you permission to be honest, like what you're saying. And so we do really hope and encourage people to ask it directly, ask it so that they can answer truthfully, and then meet them in that moment, meet them with compassion, with care, but know that there are resources immediately available. We point to 1-800-273-TALK, which is the National Lifeline, our Friends at Crisis text line, knowing that you can go to the ER, or there are now more behavioral health places that say, hey, you know what? There are people who can help you. Can I go with you? Can I take you? Can I make sure that you don't sit by yourself isolated in this experience? Let's go find the people who can help you. I think that can be really reassuring to somebody. And obviously you want to, of course, meet them with compassion and make sure that you follow up with them. Maybe that next step is calling a hotline or getting in with their counselor because they already have a counselor, or making that counseling appointment, but then following back up and saying, hey, how are you doing? that was really hard. I'm still thinking about you, knowing that they're not in this on their own. I think that's a goal of ours, that people would know how to kind of have that that support system around them in those moments.
You alluded to it. I always quote Aaron Moore, and he just shared it years ago. I don't even remember the setting, but just talked about the need when we're the concerned person who's trying to figure out how to help a loved one who's struggling, that for us to remember to bring both compassion and honesty.
Yeah.
And so compassion, number one, making sure we show up in love and we make it known to that other person that we're with them, we're for them, we're going to keep showing up. But honesty, as you guys talked about, being willing to express concern, to ask the hard question, to say those difficult words, but to kind of try to live in the tension of representing both and then to continue to represent both.
Yeah, no, I always love that point. Thank you for sharing that. So that was one of our action steps on the website that you can still find. You can read some more information from our friends at American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. There are assets that you can download, images you can download and put on your social media so you can share that information. I want to get to a couple more questions from people who've submitted. There's a couple on YouTube and one on Twitter. So we've got Jules from YouTube. She says, friends and family, besides my husband and adult kids, don't understand my depression. Do you have any advice?
So I would say there's a need for, whether you are in treatment for addiction, mood disorders, trauma, eating disorders, for the whole family to be a part of that process often. Sometimes that's not realistic, or it's not even something that's maybe appropriate based on the family dynamics, but often the family is a key component to change, and the family needs to be educated in that in those areas. So personally, what I do as a therapist when people are voicing this concern is, if it seems appropriate, I will ask them to bring their spouse or their family in, and actually have what we call a psychoeducation session, where I just educate them on these issues. And by doing that, it ends up changing the conversation from a moral accusation, whether the person's struggling with depression and can't get out of bed. It's no longer they're just lazy and ungrateful. It's, wow, this person has a biochemical deficit going on that's quite literally causing them to not be able to move, right? So it shifts the language on it. So I would suggest, if you are in counseling, to talk to your counselor about perhaps bringing in some of the family and starting there. Another avenue is NAMI. So there's support groups for family members of those who are struggling with mental health issues. So,
do you think on the kind of the friendship side, just that I think we want to encourage people to find a few people. You hope that people could start with one person that gets it, that can help us feel supported. And I think we wish there was a resource for that, or we wish it was more simple. But I love to tell people that it's worth fighting for. It's worth believing that you deserve it. And even in, I think, the nature of this question, and we did a Reddit AMA and it came up yesterday, we oftentimes, like, there are people we love who just don't understand.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think just believing that you deserve a few folks who do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I would say, part of the work that we do throughout the year at To Write Love is to share stories. And sometimes people can understand depression through others' experiences, or when it's not so close to them, when it doesn't impact their life. So we would encourage you, Jules, again, to look at the resources and to share as you can. And we're grateful that you do have people in your life that can kind of support you. I want to get to another question. This one is Feel the Burn. Thank you. On YouTube, you submitted and said, I am a suicide attempt survivor, but I am having a lot of trouble adjusting to life after. I can't afford therapy and have no family. Any tips or ideas? One, I want to just say we're really grateful and thankful that you are alive. This whole campaign is to remind you, if just not you, that your life does matter. And it may be hard to see that, but we are holding on to that hope for you. And we believe that there are resources that can kind of come around you. The Find Help tool I mentioned, actually, if you can't afford therapy, there are actually free and reduced mental health services that are available in there. It helps share all of the state, local, federal programs. So we would encourage you to really look at those, because we do hear a lot, I can't afford therapy. And so people wonder, what are my options? But don't give up yet on those, because there are a lot of options. There are support groups. We're not sure if you're a student, there are often counseling student centers available that are usually little to no fees. But we want to encourage you to not give up, because we believe that you do matter. I don't know if you guys want to kind of give Jules any more, Feel the Burn, that is who we're talking to now. Any more encouragement?
I agree with the encouragement, just in the idea that the whole campaign is for you, that we believe the words on our shirts, "You make today better," that you're not an exception to that these words are yours. And I just wanted to switch gears or kind of touch, if it's okay, for people who are curious about the counseling that we'll be funding, how could they apply to be a part of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have on the Find Help page, there's an email. It's findhelp@Twaloha. We would love for you to just send us an email and tell us a little bit about what's going on, and we can either help you, connect to the resources that are available, whether they're free and reduced already available, or work with you to make that available. We hope to, like we said, the funds that we're raising, $150,000 this year, we're hoping to be able to sponsor 3,000 counseling sessions. We want to do as much good as we can with those funds, but we do encourage you to just send us an email. So Feel the Burn on YouTube, we would encourage you. We'll drop a link in there to how you can reach out and apply for some of that support. I think that's really important. Thanks, Jamie, for saying that.
I would just add that you're literally not alone in this experience. Our healthcare system is pretty broken in a lot of ways, leaving people like yourself in that position of vulnerability where it appears there's very limited resources. But there are some creative ways to experience the change that you're looking for. Sometimes it doesn't even start with therapy. Sometimes it starts with maybe going to a local community health center and meeting with a PA or ARNP and getting, trying a antidepressant for the first time. That can jumpstart that. But yeah, so it can look different for each person, and it doesn't always have to start with the therapist.
Yeah.
And then I think we talk a lot about self-care as well, and certainly not as a substitute or replacement for professional help, but in addition. I even think about my own life. I go to counseling 1 hour a week, sometimes 2 hours if it's a tough week. But there are all these other hours to fill in, and only in the last few years, I feel like, have I started to really think seriously about kind of this buffet of good things, everything from exercise to sleep to prioritizing relationships to now having a puppy, hobbies that I've reconnected with, like all these good things that will look different for each of us. But to believe in the context of your mental health, of a season of struggle, that there's a place and there's value on those things as well.
Yeah.
No, my counselor, we talk about things as simple as, what would it look like to join a kickball league? Like literally just, how do I find connection? How can I live a healthy life and be with other people? And so many of those are things that don't cost money.
Yeah, no, that's really important. We are filling up our hour, but I want to keep going if you guys are okay. We've got some more things we want to talk about. One of the action steps that we encouraged people on Monday was to talk about some of the myths or lies that we believe about suicide. And for me, as I was thinking about this, of course, as we're thinking about it every year, I think about what are some of the challenges that we're up against when we want to change those statistics, when we want to see not 800,000 people dying by suicide every year. What can we be doing? The suicide rates for older adult males is going up. It's going up for younger people. Like, we have got to continue to fight with everything we have. And so to me, the most important underlying factor of this conversation is, what do we believe about suicide? Because if what we believe about suicide is something like there's nothing you can do to prevent or stop someone if they want to die by suicide. They will. That type of mentality can kind of make us helpless and make us not active and not fighting for our voices to be heard, not fighting for smart legislation and policy, not fighting for more resources. And so I want to tackle that one. To me, it's one I feel really strongly about. We posted this, and this was kind of the way we framed it, was that, you know, if somebody wants to die by suicide, they will find a way, and there's nothing you can do to prevent it. And then the truth of that, which, while certainly I do want to put a caveat on this, is that not every death by suicide is going to be explained or preventable, but we have to try. And what research has shown us is that when people have reduced access to lethal means, and when we say lethal means, we're talking guns, firearms, or stockpiles of pills, things that are lethal when enacted, they are going to be less likely to act on their thoughts. So if you don't have access to a firearm, you are less likely to act on that thought, and if they do act, they're less likely to die. So there's going to be some stats, and hopefully we can drop these in the comments. But approximately, this is some research that our friends at Everytown have done, and when they've looked at guns and the deaths by guns, specifically around suicide, approximately 85% of people who attempted suicide with a gun will die. But in contrast, 95% of people who attempt suicide with another means, they will live, and they will be unlikely to attempt suicide again. We know that firearms are incredibly lethal. And so what we're trying to do with this conversation is to just talk about the reality that if you know somebody, or you're concerned about someone, that they are in a suicidal crisis, and it's been made aware of that you know that they are, to think about, do you have a firearm? Do you have a gun access? Mm-hmm. Asking that question and then knowing what you can do about that to help that be not an option could save their life. It could help them get into treatment. It could help them get into a hospital. It could help them stay safe while they are treated for either mental health or whatever crisis they're dealing with. I think our hope in this is to not say, hey, all right. Thanks for hanging with us on the intermission that we had. Just had a little bit of a technical error there, but we are back. We're sure we're back. Just want to double check we're back. Yes, we are back. Okay. So we were just talking a little bit, if you're joining us now after our brief intermission, we were talking about some of the research that has come out that has pointed to ways that we can prevent suicide. Suicides with lethal means. Firearms is kind of one of the biggest area that if you are concerned about a friend, a family member, or yourself, and you have access to a gun, it's really important that we know that we need to remove that from the equation, because the mental health state, the condition that the mind is in a suicidal crisis, is not going to be rational in that regard. And so there's a couple things you can do. On our website, when we talk about this particular statement, we talk about red flag laws. It's kind of a newer thing that's happening in about 13 states. They've passed these laws where if you are a loved one and you're concerned that someone is either going to harm somebody else or themselves with a firearm, you can let local law enforcement know, and they will temporarily remove it from the home. You go through a process to kind of say why you should or should not have access to it again, but it gives us time. And time is one of, I would say, our friends in this equation, giving people time to seek help, to have treatment, to move past the crisis or the moment of stress. We want people to stay. And I think that's one thing that we need to share, that it's really does impact this conversation in a pretty significant way. And so, yeah, I just want to reiterate, suicide attempts by firearms are almost always fatal, while attempts by other methods are less likely to result in death. And so we want to encourage people to think about that when they're interacting with people they love and care about. I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to kind of think about in that regard.
So we call it access to means.
Yes.
And so part of the suicide assessment includes assessing the access to means. And often for myself and most counselors, access to means can really be the difference between a stabilization, involuntary or voluntary stabilization, and just continuing on in the outpatient setting. So really that can be a critical factor. So we've seen some strategies in certain cities where barriers on bridges have been built, and that has shown to reduce deaths at those bridges. And those people have even been followed afterwards, and they have not had an attempt after.
Yeah, they didn't
attempt.
find
Yes.
another way.
Yeah,
per se.
exactly. Yeah. So it's been proven that reducing access to means can and often does save a life.
Yeah.
I think I just would encourage people to not be afraid of the topic. I think a lot of people say mental health, I'm with you, addiction, self-injury, anxiety, suicide, but when you bring up guns, it sounds political and we can't go there. And just to encourage people to learn the facts, to learn the facts the same way that we are, to really dig into this. And I think what we're trying to say is access to means, access especially to firearms, changes everything. And you don't have to take our word for it. Like we want to continue to learn. We want to invite you to learn. And I think the average person doesn't realize that there are more deaths by suicide than homicide when it comes to firearm related incidents.
Yeah.
And I think so we just want to be willing to have the conversation and to invite other people into the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So want to get to a couple more of these myths that we talked about on Monday. Those are still at our website. We probably won't have time to get through all of them. We also have a couple more questions we would probably want to tackle. But we're going to continue to be with you guys. We're going to, as long as the technology doesn't fail us, we're going to keep chatting. Okay, so there's one more.
Are we okay?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We getting okay on the video? Yep, okay, great. There's a bit of a lag, so. Okay, this was another one I really wanted to follow up this conversation we were having about access to means. And it kind of talks a little bit more about what happens when someone does lose a loved one or a friend to suicide. There is a lie that says losing someone you care about to suicide is your fault. We know that for every suicide death, there will be 6 people who will be called survivors of suicide. These are the people that are impacted by suicide. And we often hear, because it's a process of grief, it's traumatic, it's painful, well, is it my fault? What should I have done more? And the process of understanding, there are questions that naturally we won't ever try to answer for any one person in this position, but we just want to let people know that it's not your fault. 90% of people who die by suicide at the time of their death will have a medically diagnosable mental health illness. Depression impacts their ability to make choices. And so I don't know if you got cancer if someone would blame themselves for you getting cancer. So we have to kind of look at it a little bit and say, while of course we want to do anything and everything we could possibly think of because we love these people, it's really harmful to say that it's your fault, because I think it's just too much for one person to carry the weight of. And so I just wonder if we could talk a little bit about just some of the causes of like suicide. And there is research. Dr. Thomas Joyner, who works at Florida State University and is a leading researcher in suicidology, talks about this experience that a suicidal person has of burdensomeness, that they feel like they are a burden to those around them. He also talks about alienation. And so I think it's really important to kind of understand that mindset. It's important because it is not always necessarily and is very rarely a reflection the people who love and care and who are fighting for people who are fighting this really hard battle. So I don't know if you guys want to kind of speak about that experience of survivors and what we can help point them to kind of process and to feel supported as well as they ask and deal with these difficult questions.
Yeah, I would echo what you're saying and what Thomas Joyner has said as well. He refers to suicide as a force of nature. And he says that to really push against the misconception that it's just this like kind of moral failure or choice or selfish act or whatever it is. And so calling it a force of nature really puts it into perspective in terms of how powerful this thing is and how many variables there are to this thing. So for it to be one person's fault or a community's fault could never be true. There are so many components to this, from everything from the lethality component to the mood disorder component that make this extremely complicated but survivable issue. So.
Yeah, I think that touches a little bit on the lie that we talked about, which is suicide is a purely selfish act or is the easy way out. Because the truth is that many people experiencing depression or having suicide ideation are going through extreme mental and physical pain.
Yeah.
I think about Matt Haig, who is an author, and he actually inspired one of our campaigns, and he talked about that moment where he was standing on next to the edge of a cliff, and he was hurting so deeply that he had to do everything he could to not die by suicide, reasons to stay alive.
Yeah,
is that correct?
yeah.
And so that gave me a powerful window into what we would call the suicidal mind, and how people in that place perceive their life and their value and their story. And so that is, if you perceive yourself as a burden, you also perceive that your death is worth more than your life. And so in effect, that means you're not seeing this as selfish. You're seeing this as the way to relieve your friends and family of what you perceive yourself to be. And I think we have to remind ourselves that our minds, if we're not in a suicidal crisis, are working very differently than one that is. And so the rationale looks completely different, but they arrive at different conclusions. And it requires compassion for us to see that. And I would just encourage people, when we do talk about suicide, and I want to bring back to the issue of how we talk about suicide, when we talk about it as the easy way out or we diminish people who have died by suicide, I think it creates a stigma that says you shouldn't tell someone if you're thinking about it, you can't talk about it, and so it brings in an element of shame. I want to kick that over to you real quick, because one of the other myths that I think we would like to tackle today is just how we talk about suicide, the lie that how we talk about suicide doesn't matter, because the truth is it does. So I want to maybe have you talk a little bit about this, because this is even something that's come up just as we're talking and having conversations, being intentional about with the language that we use, and I feel like you had some experiences with that this week.
Yeah, I mean, even something as simple as just the wording. We saw, or even in my own experience, a couple different moments of someone just using the phrase committed suicide versus we've learned, I didn't know this when it all began, but we've come to learn that experts agree that it's better to say died by suicide because committed frames it like a crime. And the average person wouldn't know that, or probably wouldn't have a reason to know that. We saw a prominent politician post it, and I think we were grateful for the post, but it sort of showed or highlighted the reality that a lot of people don't know what words to use, and the cool thing is there are resources that exist in terms of the tools and the information to learn what language is helpful and how and why this language matters. And I had a friend do it this morning, a friend who was posting, heart in the right place, wearing our shirt, highlighting today, and I was able to say, hey, thank you so much, and just kind of share, hey, I've actually learned this about the phrasing, and she immediately took it down and redid it. But it's I think there's grace, but there's also wanting people to learn to use language that that's comfortable, that's helpful.
Yeah, and humanizes them and
Yeah.
the struggle and the pain that is associated with the suicidal mind and the person who is experiencing suicidal thoughts. I think that's really important for us to talk about. I don't know did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Or is it okay to answer a couple questions from
you
Twitter?
can answer questions.
Okay, because we do have a couple really great questions. Again, if you are just tuning in, we are doing our live stream in honor of World Suicide Prevention Day, which is today. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, and there are friends joining us on Twitter as well, using our hashtag YouMakeTodayBetter. We have Crisis Text Line and Child Mind Institute also interacting on Twitter for certain, and I saw them interacting on Facebook as well. So we're really grateful to them and thankful for the work they do as well year-round. All right, so this question is going to come from Jensen from Twitter, and they ask, what would you say to someone who doesn't know how or why they make today better?
You want to go? I got one idea.
Go for it.
So I'm not going to pretend that I know Jensen, but I've come to believe that all of us, every single person, Jensen, you included, are designed or somehow find ourselves here to be loved, to be known, and to have the privilege of knowing and loving other people. And another way to say that is we are here for connection, and you deserve that. And you're capable of that. And, I think a lot of people, we kind of go down this simple list of, I make today better for my family, I make today better for my friends. And we hope some of those feel true for you, Jensen. And I think we kind of touched on the difference between today and tomorrow. And so even I think if some of those things feel like challenges today, we want to believe in surprises. We want to believe that hope can show up as a surprise, that you should stay to be surprised by some eventual today where you have those things. You have relationships that make you smile. You have people who walk this road of life with you. You can get to a place where you find joy in things that come with this experience, even if it's something as simple as a hobby or reading a book or things that you love. But I believe, Jensen, that you make today better for other people.
Yeah, well said. I would say you have to start with, even if you don't feel it, fully believe it, you have to start from this place of hopefulness, believing that there might be a different, better life, and it's okay to not have those answers right now. It's okay to not feel the way that you want to feel. It's okay to not have the response to that statement. So that's where I encourage people to continue to press in, to be brave and courageous, even if you don't understand it, to talk with people, to reach out, to continue to move forward, and be surprised at what you find.
I think too, it maybe makes a case for some of what we've already talked about, and specifically counseling. It's such a big question, and it could be such a good question to process with a mental health professional. And obviously there are so many questions and layers within that, but we're taking a moment here on this live stream, but I wonder what would it look like to process that question, to wrestle with that question, certainly with loved ones, hopefully with friends, with family, but also with a counselor, with a professional.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. This is from, sorry if I get the name wrong, Daniela Aubrey on Facebook. She mentions, I've been suicidal since I was 11, and I still struggle with that and self-harm at 21. I thought I'd be able to stop after my teen years because that's a teen thing, right? But it's not, and I've been doing better recently, but I'm still not quite there yet. I would just want to say, Daniela, that you're not alone, and it's actually not necessarily just a teen thing. What you're dealing with are issues that often do come onset, often for people around the teenage years. But we hear from people, year round that say, I'm, 30 and I'm dealing with this, but is it a teen that, so it's just a bit of a misconception that it's that you should maybe have it all figured out at the moment. And we're grateful that you're tuning in to this live stream, because we do want you to know that you're not alone in this experience. We're also really glad that you're still here and you're still fighting for it. It's great to hear that you've been doing a little bit better. I think that's worth celebrating. I think that's worth acknowledging, and not just saying, I'm doing a little better. If you're surviving to the next day, if you're making it a week, a month, or a year, we hope you celebrate that. I think that's one of the things I love about Facebook birthdays. People are donating their birthday to us, and we often hear, I didn't think I was going to make it to this birthday. Our team member, Chad, has a birthday coming up, and he did that, and he said, I didn't think I was going to make it to 34, I believe he's turning. So could we raise, $340? But the point being is, you are not alone in that experience or in that thought. We love to hear that people say, I'm still here. I didn't think I was going to be here. But the flip side of that is, it can still be hard. Life can still be a struggle. A counselor would be someone we would probably encourage you to talk to. If it's self-harm specifically, we talked about finding the right counselor. So we work with a counselor, Michelle Moore, out of Orlando, and she specializes in self-harm or self-injury. And there are specific ways to address that behavior, but also the underlying mood disorders and issues that are causing the suicidal ideations, and kind of just and part of that. So I don't know if you guys want to chime in there on that one.
I would say just to be patient with yourself and to show, even when you don't feel like it, to show yourself compassion, because the change process doesn't look often how we expect it or want it to. We want change to be this dramatic shift where it all just comes together, but often that's not how it happens. Change happens in retrospect when you're like, wow, there was that, and that, and it incrementally got better. So I would say the fact that you are identifying some aspect that has gotten better is a huge indicator that you're moving in the right direction and that there's reason to be hopeful.
Would you guys, as you were talking, I was thinking about support groups and even 12-step meetings specific to self-injury. So just knowing there's a place for connection, there's a place for professional help. That her question didn't indicate that professional help piece, and so I think as I even heard you read the question, I think part of me wondered, hey, do you have Daniela, do you have the support that you deserve?
Yeah, for sure. And so if you go onto our website and you click on that blue button about Find Help, across the top of that page there are kind of subsections that give you more information about specific issues. So if you want to find resources that are specifically self-injury related, there are some there as well. And they actually help identify some specialists and things like that. So we can, of course, point you to those. Sorry, Siri. Thanks, Siri. So we can point you to those, but the Find Help page is a great place to start. And so we're grateful that you're here, Daniela. Let's see. I want to get to one more question, and then we want to share a little bit more about the action steps. Of course, we are still raising money for treatment and recovery, so if you're watching, there are links to donate, there are ways to support the funds that we're talking about and people having access to mental health resources. But I think this will be one of our last questions, and then we want to give you guys some updates about things that are happening even tonight, later this week, and in the weeks to come. So, okay, this last question comes from Rachel on YouTube. Quick side note, if you have questions, we are still answering them on the other platforms, but that might be the last one we can do on the live stream. So Rachel on YouTube says, I know I need help with my addiction and depression, but I just can't bring myself to find help or even talk about it. Any advice? I want to ask you to answer this because I think you might have felt this way in your life at one point and wondered if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the common experience that people have in that state usually is shame, feeling ashamed, maybe feeling alienated from family and friends, burning bridges, and secrecy drives that. So, like, I would just really encourage to reach out to one person, to talk to them, to move towards getting that help that you need, because it can't change alone. And maybe it could just be as scary as this can be, stepping into an NA meeting or AA meeting. Sometimes that, for some people, can be a better approach because they don't really know anyone, perhaps. So, but the key ingredient there is you have to move towards people, and out of the shame, especially early on where the shame is going to be the strongest.
Yeah. And I would say Crisis Text Line, they're actually participating in this part of this live stream. They're a great resource because they're just a text message away. You can send, to 741-741, just the word or the keyword, to Aloha, TWLOHA, and maybe start there. Start sharing with someone who you don't know, but if that's the first kind of opening of the faucet, of the opening of the conversation, and you can get more comfortable there, that's a great place to start. They can point you again to these resources. I think posting this question is also part of this process for you, Rachel. Like, you actually are talking about it. You are sharing, and we're grateful that you're a part of this conversation and this community. So thank you for that.
I just want to, it's short, but just say that we believe it's worth it. Denny talked about kind of this simple place to start with professional help is we believe it works. At the time he was talking about counseling, but we believe it's worth it to get help. Not that it's easy, not that it's not intimidating or scary, but that ultimately you deserve better. You deserve healing. You deserve sobriety. And there are people and places you can turn to that want to help. It could be as simple as starting with that text to crisis text line, and it may end up with you stepping into a treatment center or sitting with a counselor. And we've come to believe and really come to know over the years that it's worth it. It's worth it to take that step. And as Lindsay touched on, maybe you're already doing it without realizing. Maybe by being so vulnerable as to ask a question that ends up on this live stream, that can be part of your process.
Man, there's still some good questions coming in. I think we have to do one more. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. This person didn't have a name, but they said, I recently spoke to my doctor about getting help for my depression. She put me on antidepressants, and I don't feel like it's helping, and I'm not sure if I want to continue with the medication. Any advice? Just quick warning. We are not medical professionals. Denny is a licensed mental health counselor who does not prescribe medication, but has worked with clients in conjunction to medical professionals. So with that, this is kind of first-person experience. We do recommend you talk to your doctor about this question, but if you have something you want to kind of encourage them, what they can maybe share with their doctor or counselor.
Yeah, so rarely does the first attempt at using an antidepressant work. A lot of that is because genetically we're all different. So I would encourage deeper exploration with your doctor on some different antidepressant options. And then if your doctor, maybe the doctor doesn't specialize in it, maybe they're not a psychiatrist, sometimes it can benefit to actually go to a psychiatrist who might know more the nuances of it because they specialize in it. There's all sorts of things like genetic testing to determine what antidepressants are best for your biochemistry. So there's a lot of hope. Don't give up, and it definitely can be a little bit of a process of finding the nice balance between effectiveness and low side effects. That's kind of what you're going for. So sometimes that can take a few different, tries.
Yeah, that was my experience. Started off with one and didn't seem perfect, and talked to my psychiatrist and then switched and have been on something else ever since. And so I think hopefully it's reassuring to know that is very common and it's okay. And kind of as we sort of half joked about, don't give up after your first session. Like, don't give up on meds or getting better or healing altogether. Like be willing to see it through and know that, a good psychiatrist can help you navigate that uncertainty.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, guys. So as we're kind of concluding some of the questions from our supporters, please continue to put them in the comment sections. We will continue to respond and answer. We also have our our email account, which is info@twaloha, info@twaloha.com. We will continue to respond. We want the conversation to keep going. And we've got, the good news is is it Tuesday?
It's Tuesday.
I'm like, I don't know what day of the week
Yeah.
it is. It's been a long week. It's Tuesday, and it is World Suicide Prevention Day. So we are continuing to fundraise. We have a goal to raise $150,000 for treatment and recovery. We are we're over that $100,000 threshold. We're at $112,000, continuing to fundraise. You can find those campaigns on the landing page. I want to give a shout out to our friends on Twitch. We have a great and wonderful group of live streamers, people who are talking about this on Twitch, which we're really excited about. So thank you as well for those folks who are also tuning in on Twitch. And we want to just share, again, the impact of the funds that we're raising. We are hoping to be able to provide 3,000 counseling sessions this year, as well as fund our Find Help tool, which is connecting thousands of people to those resources that we talk about, that bridge to help. The free and reduced mental health services that are in communities and making them accessible because people can now find them. And it's amazing. We could do a whole hour on this tool, but talking about you can add filters to your search. So how close is it? Can you, what kind of specialist are you looking for? What can you afford? Are you looking, there's so many different things you can do, but there's also ways to book an appointment right through that tool. So you can call the therapist and make that appointment. And we've been seeing people do that, and it's amazing to just know that they are that much closer and connected to help, which is often very challenging to find. I wanted to read a couple of these quotes that we've had. We've been sharing these on social media, but it feels really important to just talk about the impact of the dollars that you all are raising and why it matters. This was a quote that we received. I was previously planning to end my story prior to going to counseling. Receiving this scholarship means that my story gets to continue. We got another one that said, the Twaloha Find Help page helped me find a therapist I could afford so I could get the help that I needed. That's what we're here to do. That's our mission. And then finally, this is another scholarship recipient. This scholarship has helped me more than you know. I am alive, I am recovering, and I am starting to see what life looks like without the constant cloud of mental illness. I cannot thank you enough. So those words, those are for you guys. Those are the recipients of the scholarship funds that we are raising through this campaign. We're grateful, so grateful to every person who has joined the campaign, even raising $10, $20, $50, donating $5. It all adds up, and it's all going to help people get the help that they need and that they deserve. I wanted to just highlight a couple more things. We've got some fun events happening throughout the rest of this week and even tonight. So if you are in Milwaukee, we have 2 events coming up there at the same location. You can find them, one tonight, one tomorrow. Check out our events calendar. We'll put some links down in the comments where you can find out some really cool stuff that's happening at, what's the location? Stone Creek. So check out the locations. Go be participating in that. Those are free events to attend, I believe. And our friend and coworker Chad is going to be speaking there. There will be artist Whitney Finnemore is lending her voice to those evenings. We will also have a team at Riot Fest Chicago this weekend, continuing this conversation. It's not over yet. We want to keep going. And then we have something else very special coming up that we want to share with you guys. Jamie, can I have you do the plug for this one?
So Saturday, September 21st at the House of Blues. It's our annual event, flagship event, favorite night of the year. It's called Heavy and Light. I don't know how many years, but a whole bunch in a row. We started at the Social in downtown Orlando, and then we graduated to the House of Blues, where we've been ever since. And it's a night of music, so we have 4 musical acts. John Foreman from Switchfoot will be back to headline. Our friend Anthony from Bayside. Dessa, who is a new face, a new friend of the organization, and a band called Swim. They're actually from here in Central Florida and now live in Los Angeles. We'll have Morgan Harper-Nichols and her sister, Jamie Grace. Morgan is by far the most popular person involved. You may know Morgan from Instagram from beautiful, inspiring, encouraging.
And a podcast episode recently.
and a
Go
podcast.
listen.
Yeah.
They're all there.
Her and Morgan and Jamie will be speaking. We
Where can they find tickets?
You can find tickets on our website. I was going to ask Denny to speak on the.
Oh, I'm not doing that.
There are a few tickets left in our online store, but you can also find them through our website, through Live Nation, House of Blues, kind of anywhere you would typically find tickets.
Heard there was a buy one get one happening, so time is now, people.
Yeah.
If you love a BOGO deal.
Yep. So instead of $22, you can get tickets for $11, 2 for $22. We'll just keep going. But it's a night that we hope more than anything, not just entertaining people, but really leaving people encouraged. And we love connecting people to local resources. And thankfully through our website now, we can do that not just in Central Florida, but we also love that it's a night where people come from all over. People take road trips, people get on airplanes. And it's such a neat thing to see people travel, even year after year, to make a tradition out of being there. And I think one of the most powerful stories we've ever heard, there was, and it really relates to today, but 1 year after we won a significant grant, we were able to do a nationwide tour of Heavy and Light. And it was a night in San Diego, and a young person came only to see Noah Gunderson, who was, I believe, the opener or one of the early acts on that tour. Didn't know really anything about the night, about the show, but came to see Noah, stayed. And Noah found out after the fact, this person had decided that they would die by suicide soon after, that they had made a plan. I believe they had purchased a gun. And so they decided this would be one of their final outings, and they were going to come see a night of music. And they ended up staying for the show. And as a result of somehow what they experienced in the room that night, decided to get help, decided to keep going, decided to stay alive.
Tell their parent, I remember they said,
And so to me, that's the dream, that's the goal. I mean, that's why we do everything, but even specific to Heavy and Light, like that's the hope, that there might be someone in the room that is in a dark place, that is struggling, and they could walk out of that show believing that life is worth living. And I love to even challenge the artists who show up to say, hey, what are the songs you would choose to play for someone in that place? And so it's something we love, that we get to keep doing it. And so we would love for you to be with us in the room again at the House of Blues Orlando, Saturday, September 21st.
Yeah, it's a great night. So we hope you come out and join us. It is World Suicide Prevention Day. We are wrapping up our World Suicide Prevention Day live stream. But the conversation, please don't stop after we're going to hit. There's a couple more important announcements. But we want you to use your voice. We want you to add your story. There are things you can be doing. We pointed to the video. We have 2 videos actually this year. There's the short story kind of video, and then the video that we launched on Sunday, which is our World Suicide Prevention Day video. Please share that. That's a very easy way for people to be introduced to the campaign, to this statement, and to what we're trying to accomplish. We're raising money for treatment and recovery. So we are trying to hit that $150,000 goal by Saturday evening. And then there are action steps. So we want to make this really tangible for people. Every day this week during National Suicide Prevention Week in America, we have given you some things that you can either learn about, things you can share, things you can be doing. And I want to just give you a quick preview now that we're already sort of through Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, is that tomorrow we're going to continue the fundraising efforts. On Thursday, we're going to be talking specifically more about those find help resources. What mental health resources do you have? How can you make them readily available for people in your life or for yourself? And then on Friday, we're going to be talking a little bit about how to create a self-care and safety plan. So you know how to best care for yourself if you experience depression or you're having suicidal thoughts, or others. We encourage people to carry this on them. We did this during Mental Health Month, which was in May, and it was awesome to see people really thinking about, like you said, what's my self-care? Who can I call if I'm really hurting? Who can I talk to if I need to talk to a counselor or crisis text line? So those are things we're going to encourage you guys to do. And then on Saturday, we're going to leave you with ways to continue talking about mental health, about suicide prevention, because while the conversation kind of ramps up right now, it doesn't end. We want to keep it going. And so we would encourage you to join us for every day this week. And then we're excited to announce this other fun thing. So I'm going to let you do that.
Yeah, we're so excited that we get to do this again. I think as of a couple of days ago, we didn't expect this, but we have 4 friends from the United States Women's National Soccer Team who are donating their game jerseys to us once again. So autographed game jerseys from Ashlyn Harris, Alex Morgan, Kristen Press, and Tobin Heath. And actually, those are the same 4 folks who did this a year ago. A year ago, we raised $40,000 through these 4 jerseys.
44, yeah.
And so we're so pumped. It really just came together in the last couple of days.
So if you are one of those fans, if you love those wonderful players and their jerseys, you can donate and receive some entries for that, and we'll be pulling that officially at the end of October, but it's going to end. It's going to be a short kind of campaign, so you have until Sunday night to get your entries in. We'll be launching that. We'll be sharing that. They'll be talking about it. It's all of those funds are going to go toward our campaign, that $150,000 that we are hoping to raise, and it's going to go help people get the help that they need and deserve. So we're really grateful and thankful to those women.
I just wanted to give credit to Ashlyn. We get asked all the time, like, how did you get to know all of these soccer players? And so all of that gets traced back to Ashlyn Harris. Ashlyn is from Brevard County, from Central Florida. Her and I were a few years apart in age, but we went to the same high school, to Satellite High School. And so I've known Ashlyn since before all of this, before this To Write Love on Our Arms story and organization, and we've remained friends, kind of reconnected once this got started. And she's just become such a vocal supporter. And so through Ashlyn, we've gotten to know Alex and Kristen and Tobin and women that play at the U.S. level, so many different women who play for the NWSL club teams. You should go watch them. But we're super grateful, and I love to acknowledge Ashlyn's special place in our history.
Yeah. There's one final closing thought. We were asked from Becky on Facebook, what made you smile today? Can we do that as we close out? What made you smile today, Denny?
Waking up and seeing my son.
Okay, now you took my answer. Great, thank you.
That's why I went first.
How about you, Jamie?
It's a very similar answer. I'm going to add a bonus part, but I woke up with my puppy, Gracie, and I think I may have said this out loud, but knowing what today was, I told my puppy that she makes today better.
Oh, that's great.
My mom reminds me that I make today better for Gracie. But then also, I did a radio interview earlier at a station here in town, and I had trouble finding parking, and it was hot, and it was stressful, and I showed up like with just a few minutes, and I walk in a bit stressed, and there are 3 kittens that are a month old, and so could not help but smile at these kittens.
That's great. I would say, to not duplicate Denny's answer, we have a son together named August, who's also wonderful. But this morning, I just walked in and coming into work, pulled into the parking lot. I think the first person I saw was Ben. He works in our warehouse, was wearing the shirt. And I said, Ben, you make today better. And he just had this huge smile. And it made me smile, and it was really good. And I've had some texts from people who are sharing what this campaign meant. And it's meant a lot to hear what it means to others, to me. So.
Yeah, I think maybe on behalf of our team, like just we feel honored that we get to do this work year round, that we get to do it today, that we get to create and invite people into this campaign. And it really is such an extraordinary day for us to see the support from friends, from folks all over, people across the country, people outside of the U.S. It's such a special thing. And to see so many people want to participate in this conversation, to see people posting photos in this You Make Today Better t-shirt. And I want to give, do people still do shout outs?
Yeah,
okay.
That's cool. Shout outs.
39. I just want to highlight our team. So, there's a couple of us sitting here that have the privilege of being on the microphone, but just our team has been working hard for weeks and weeks to make this campaign happen, from our designers to folks working in the warehouse, interns who just got here, people working on the fundraising, so many details that have to happen and be taken care of for weeks and weeks to to make this campaign what it is. So I want to say a special thanks to our staff, our interns, former interns, monthly givers, the Tualoha Blue folks, just people fundraising, people donating. This is a day, I think, where we just feel like we get to be a part of something so much bigger than us, bigger than this building, bigger than our team, and it's really humbling.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll be releasing this as a podcast, so if you've missed any of it, feel free to watch it or to listen to it wherever you get your podcast. Check it out. So thank you, and you make today better.
You make today better.
You make today better.